Woke up.
Yeah, I woke up and I had to work on my caffeine level.
Okay.
Hey, Jerald, how are you? I tell you immediately we are already live. So tell only the
Oh,
things what you want to share with us.
oh, okay, okay. Straight
Yes,
away.
yes. Uh,
So, yeah, go ahead.
let me start, Gerald. Welcome to the next session. Don't do it like Joe. All about family, friends, football, and forex. It's lovely to have you here, Gerald. You are category friends, almost family. So,
Thank you, thank
so
you. Happy to be here.
welcome to the show, Gerald.
Thank you, thank you.
How are you, and where are you, and how are things there?
I'm well. I'm in Malaysia at this point. It's in the afternoon in Malaysia. I'm at the Human Rights Commission of Malaysia office. So, country is back to people are back to work. There is some limits on where you can go and what you can do, but generally things are back to almost normal, but with very strict protocols on face masks, and wherever you go you need an application to click, and also you're allowed interstate travel, and daily the government will give you the updates on how many infections are there. So yesterday the infections were, I think three.
How
The
many?
day before, three.
Only three. Oh,
Yeah. So the day
nice.
before was like 7, then 15. So it's been ranging from 1, 2, 3 to about 25 to 30, and the government is hoping to keep it like that, and so people are uh, quite disciplined about following the protocols, and also
Okay.
fearful of this virus. Yeah, yeah.
Three, just to give you an example, yesterday or the day before yesterday in Switzerland, we had 300 cases, new
Oh,
ones.
wow, wow, wow.
Yeah. And the bordering
So
countries like France and Germany, they have still above 1,000 new cases every day.
yeah, so I'm feeling a bit safe being here in Malaysia. So Joe, you have to take care a bit more in Switzerland.
Oh, of course, of course. Now, Gerald, before we know each other now 15 years. Yeah, we have
Yes,
met several times, even on airports to have our chats to catch up.
yeah,
And since I know you, you are in human rights, you are a workaholic in my eyes, you are fighting for your beliefs. Yes. Before we
yes.
start on our real topic, racism, yeah, I wanted to get your personal view on the COVID again. Yeah, like it started beginning of the year. How were you impacted, and how were Malaysia impacted, like from the start? Did it
Mm.
impact hugely you and Malaysia, or how did it go for you guys?
So, I was one of those few who got infected in the early part in March. In the commission, when we were doing work, we got it from here, and so I was in hospital for 9 days, but very mild symptoms, and so there was a shock to myself, my family, and people around, because at that time it was new, and the worry, the fear that it will deteriorate, and breathing difficulty. So that I think was the biggest fear. But basically, you stayed in hospital, drank lots of water, ate food, and just hope your body will keep you strong, because there's no medicine,
And
as you
you did.
know. Yeah,
And you did.
yeah.
As you survived, yes, I obviously, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
So
is that like when now Trump or any other person in the world tells you we should not overrate this COVID-19, or what is you now? You are one of the real infected ones. Yeah. What advice do you give, or what is your opinion on this issue right now?
I mean, if you want to look at it as a flu, even the most common flu, we take precautions, we take medicine, we make sure it doesn't get worse, even the most common flu. So this is becoming quite common in every corner. So I think because it's an unknown strain, and now a little bit more known, there is no excuse to take it easy. I think since it can kill and has killed many, it can deteriorate for those who are already having some illnesses or who are older. I think vigilance, discipline, and also a sense that it's not just about my own life. I mean, I meet people, I meet family, I meet friends, I meet colleagues in work. So, a kind of a collective responsibility to play your part in trying to decrease this virus that actually does not see color or people. It just goes anywhere and everywhere. And the
You
people,
think?
yeah, and the virus actually only survives and thrives because we help it move from place to place, you know. So we have a role to also help stop it. Yeah.
Okay. So you believe that the measures taken worldwide are definitely appropriate because we have a responsibility to bring the level of this disease down. Is that the summary? Is that
Yeah,
correct?
yeah. So I think joint responsibility to contribute to bringing this down. No? And this in no way means governments should also abuse these powers in their hands for other measures. You know, so government needs to institute some of the strong powers like restriction of movement, lockdown, or face mask. You know, and I think most of it are reasonable because it's for a short period of time and it helps myself, my health, my family health, and my neighbor's health. But of course, whenever it's abused, I think then it should be exposed. But trying to fight against such a measure for a pandemic, as I think, may not be necessary because this is an unknown and we are all trying to play our part.
Okay. It's good to hear that from a person who went through the disease because I do not have many people who have been really involved or infected. And so it's always kind of a bit of an illusion and talking and walking in the dark. You, yeah, it's all from the media. So, but it's good to hear from you personally. So, Jerald, human rights and racism, where do they cross over? Where do they cross over in Malaysia or in general globally?
Well, I think the history of this human rights regime, so to speak, in any part of the world is actually discrimination of any sort. I think the United Nations, Joe, where you live, is the United Nations, one of the big headquarters is there in Geneva. It actually started off from the reaction to discrimination, racial discrimination to be specific, post World War One, World War Two. You know, so you know the horror stories that we heard about Europe, but also the horror stories in this part of the world during the World War Two. You know, the Japanese occupation. So I think this is not new. Racism has been part of different societies. Powerful lord over the weak, and if they colonize, they take over and they treat them badly. I mean, you hardly hear stories of colonization with very good positive stories. You know, it's always I won, I'm in power, and you keep quiet and follow. So I think we know this game of racial discrimination. That's where human rights reside because human rights actually is trying to bring back the balance of loss of dignity because people are given some parts of rights and some are given to another group of society. And I think that's why countries like Malaysia and I'm sure many other countries have either in history or present struggled with this issue of racial discrimination, or both at sometimes at a systematic level, at an institutional level, but most of the time at also in our attitude and personal level. You and I are also subject to, as human as possible, to sometimes forget that we should not treat people in a discriminatory fashion. So for me, I think these two are one and the same. No? It's just a different aspect of human rights. But equality, non-discrimination, I would always call it as the cornerstone of human rights. Because you don't need to learn or study human rights to understand that I've been treated badly by my neighbor. Or when I go to another country, they look at my passport and look at my face and say, I will ask you 10 minutes of question, but the other person 1 minute, okay, go, Yeah.
Yes, yes. Sometimes we live in an upside world. Yes. Now, in theory, we have done a lot to avoid it. I mean, split powers, split the executive and the juristic levels, and also on paper, and the Football Association does no racism banners all over the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, th- for you personal, Gerald, does it need an event like the George Floyd "I Can't Breathe" Black Lives Matters, or was that just an incident for you? Okay, but you experience it anyway in the daily lives, in your job, or in Malaysia, or when you go on traveling worldwide.
So I think the incident of George Floyd in the U.S. Is a strong image where people get angry, but it's a common experience from victims all over the world. But the more it comes out, the better. So I'm glad that Black Lives Matter movement used that, and a lot of questions were asked not only about the USA but also about all our countries. Do Black lives really matter? Do minorities really matter? Or it's not important? It's just only the people in power. But your question is whether this is shocking. No, it's not shocking because it happens in different degrees. In that video, you saw physical police abuse, so you can see that pain and the death, and you get angry. But everyday lives, you may not see physical abuse, you may not see even death, but the practice of being treated differently or lesser than the others is a common experience in Malaysia as well as in many other countries, I'm sure. And I think sometimes we take it for granted. Well, that's how life is. This is what it should be. We cannot do more, because this has been part of Malaysia for 62 years now, 63 years since independence.
For a better understanding for our audience, do you have a specific example from Malaysia out of the daily life where you say there could be progress made in the future?
So, just a quick 2 minutes for those who are not familiar with Malaysia. We were colonized by the British in 1824, and then 1957 independence. But the negotiation of independence was to create a new government of political parties based on what we use the word race, which is basically a combination of ethnicity. So you have the Malay, which is different ethnic groups who are from the region, plus Muslim generally. You have those of Chinese descent who have come 150 years ago because of migration for work, and those of Indian descent like myself who also come. My great-grandparents came because of migration for economic reasons, or either organized by the British for labor in Malaysia. So they created three parties with this identity and asked them, you work together and we will hand over Malaysia to you. And that has colored this whole political landscape of all future of Malaysia must be negotiated in your own cluster groups. So it's not a Malaysian party, it's a party of a combination of ethnic and race base. And that, I think, has been to our disadvantage, because people in Malaysia keeps thinking of Malay, Chinese, Indian, and then you don't forget the indigenous people who are forgotten, and also in across the seas where Sarawak and Sabah is, they feel even more discriminated because they say that the other side has got more development and you've forgotten us, you've taken all our resources. So the list goes on, but it started off not on a good note. Sadly, 62 years after, this present list of political system and politicians still play the same game, the same race card to win power. So in our daily lives, so that's the background. In our daily lives, it can range from an example of a school. A few years ago, a school in the north, drinking water. They have a water cooler, and you drink water. And they have two sets of cups, one for Muslim and one for non-Muslims. But this is not a policy. You can't find this in any government policy, but a school decides this is the best. In another school in the south, there are two canteens. One canteen is the place where you buy your food for during your break for school children. One canteen is for the Muslims, and one canteen is for the non-Muslim food. And then we also had incidents where a private business setting up a laundry shop where you can go and give your clothes for washing. And that laundry was only for Muslims, so only Muslim clothes will be washed, and so separation. So these are everyday events that shock people to say. Then the question is, how do you handle the money that comes from different people? Would you say no to cash that a non-Muslim has given you? Because if you want to use that logic, it's also tainted money, And then that argument doesn't hold water. But people still think it is okay to separate people at this level. That's on the religious point of view,
Yeah.
And also, yeah.
Exactly. That what would have been my question now. Is that really considered as racism, or is it a religious issue?
Yeah. So under the definition of racial discrimination, the grounds for racial discrimination usually does not involve religious discrimination. But in Malaysia, because usually it's distinction or exclusion based on race, color, descent, national or ethnic origin, and other circumstances. But in Malaysia, because the identity of the ethnic Malay by constitution is defined as Muslim, so that's where the marriage has happened of the two identities becoming one. So the constitution defines a Malay person, and it's very strange to have a constitutional definition of a racial grouping, only for one group, for the Malays. A person who professes the religion of Islam, who speaks the Malay language, who habitually practices the culture of the Malay community. So most in Malaysia would be practicing the other two. I speak Malay, I know the Malay culture, I eat their food, I can dance the Malay dance. So I'm two-thirds a Malay by constitutional definition. I'm just not a Muslim. So it's a strange definition. So that's why I gave you examples of religion. But on a more serious note, our constitution also have special affirmative action policy or positive discrimination for the majority since the independence. So I know most countries, positive discrimination for minority groups who are left out and left behind. But Malaysia, it was put in years ago, needed at that time, but not at this present moment. But this means that entry into university, there is a kind of a quota system. And so many of the non-Malay community will always feel disadvantaged, although your results are top results, but you don't get places in the university. Employment in the civil service, almost 90% is of the majority Malay race, and people feel, why should that be so? So the list can go on, and when you walk everywhere, you can see them physically. And then the question is, why are they not applying to join civil service? I just had a discussion with some government departments, and they said it's open, there's no close, but no one is applying. I said they will only apply if you can assure them that they will have an equal chance to be promoted to be the number one in the department. If they feel it's a fair game, people will come in. But because now they don't feel it's fair, that is always weighted towards one community. So very little non-Malays are applying for positions in the government.
I see. Well, Malaysia, who has ever been there, is a fabulous place to visit. And really, the best of all, I think, is the food, the variety. The people also variety. I've visited families with 3-4 different religions under one roof.
Yeah.
I mean, all these different, these are challenges. I think these are challenges, but what you say really makes the point. I mean, it needs a lot of effort to respect the human rights and the equality of the people. I agree 100% with that. Okay, Jerald, now we are far above time, but it was very interesting to get your view. You were last week on TV. I watched it. Very nice. And so what's next for you the next couple of years? Where are you going? What are your challenges?
The politics in Malaysia is squirmy, and it's like an quicksand. So things are changing so fast, and you're not sure. It's not in a positive sense. So that is sort of giving an impact on the work on human rights, because the last government was kicked out, not through an election, but through internal negotiation. So you have a new government, and that government is also now not so strong, and there's new negotiation. So all this has an impact on our work here in the Human Rights Commission and my work in the human rights field, because you need people who believe Malaysia can do better at all levels in order to change policy and law. So I'm here in the commission for another 1.5 years, and I finish my term. And maybe it's time to get back to the ground or try something else, or come to Switzerland and work in Switzerland with you, Joe. So with human rights, so human rights doesn't have a border, but
there's there is. We have a wonderful lake here and nice mountains, and offices are not so occupied right now because of the COVID. So I'm sure we find something for you, Jerald.
Thank you.
And I'm sure in the UN you have so many friends in there. So
that's true.
Wonderful. Okay, so last but not least, Jerald, because the show is called "Don't Do It Like Joe," and actually based on the principle of Jack Ma, the founder of Alibaba, who said that he learned in life most from his failures than from his success. Do you have anything what you want to tell the audience, like what happened to you personally, or what you would like to tell to them, where as a kind of a quote from you as an advice to have a good life?
Well, my only thought is that because I've been on both sides, I'm a human rights activist who demonstrates, protests, and shouts outside for change. In the last 4 years plus, I've been on the chance to be on the inside to shout and demand for change. So I think we need to continue shouting, but the shout becomes different language, different volume, different style. So, but I think you cannot let up on the consistency of the message, but you need to be able to go into boardrooms and bring the message. And I think I've also realized there are many good people on the inside who actually want change, but they are unable to speak up. And so finding these people are important in the game for change.
Fantastic. Okay, very good advice, Jerald. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I wish you already a good weekend, and speak soon.
You too. Bye-bye. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.